Well, good morning, everybody. The last time we had a little press conference in London, it was on Monday, and I said to you, something is happening out there. There is a momentum behind what Reform UK are doing. And of course, there's always a lag time between understanding what's happening on the ground and seeing it playing out in the polls. I also told you that some of the polling industry were acting entirely dishonestly, and I'm pleased to say, as a result of my letter to the chair of the British Polling Council, they have been told now they really ought to be prompting for reform. So they're all playing catch-up. I also said 3 or 4 weeks ago that I thought Reform would get more votes in this general election than the Conservative Party, and I absolutely believe that now to be the case. So yes, it was a delight last night to see that the inflection point has arrived. The momentum that Richard and I are seeing on the streets and on the doors is now filtering through, and we are 1 point ahead of the Conservatives. But just bear this in mind. We are well ahead of the Conservatives in the North East, in the North West, in Yorkshire and the Humber, in the East Midlands, in the West Midlands, and in parts of Eastern Region. And in what we all call the red wall seats, we are significantly ahead of the Conservatives. And so I think Penny Mordaunt was a little bit shocked last night on the ITV debate. I don't think she had a very good evening, really, all round, because they're still pumping out the same line, that if you vote for Reform, you will get Labour. But the inflection point means that actually, if you vote Conservative in the red wall, you will almost certainly get Labour. A Conservative vote in the red wall is now a wasted vote. We are the challengers to Labour. We are now the real opposition. And this needs to be reflected. As I said, it's beginning to be reflected by the polling industry, but it needs to be reflected by the broadcasters as well, because Ofcom, on the guidance they've given to broadcasters, say that really the most important of all the factors is the performance in the last 2 general elections. We haven't stood in the last 2 general elections. It's as if everything about our politics is designed to stop new boys and girls coming in and to keep everything the same. At the moment, broadcasters are giving our party 8% of their coverage, which clearly is nowhere near in line with where we actually are. But there's something else I want to ask for today. The BBC will be having a leaders' debate, a 4-way leaders' debate with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the Conservatives, Labour and the SNP, and that takes place next week. And I think we can demand of right now that the BBC put us into that debate. I would also very much like to do a debate head-to-head with Keir Starmer. And the reason is very simple. We think that this should be the immigration election, because whether we're talking about rents, whether we're talking about housing availability, whether we're talking about access to GP services, whether we're talking about pressure on infrastructure, there is no aspect of our national life that is not touched by the massive population crisis this country now faces, directly as a result of immigration policies that were started by Labour but accelerated by this Conservative government. And I thought it was very interesting to see the Labour manifesto, where Keir Starmer lays out his 6 priorities for the country. And not one of those 6 was mass migration into Britain. So we're very much of the view that nothing will change under Labour. Who knows? It may even get a little bit worse. I would love, as I'm now the leader of the opposition, I would now love... Well, I thought that was fairly obvious to everybody. I would love to do a head-to-head with Keir Starmer to ask him why. Why, if you're going out looking for the working people of Britain to vote for you, have you not put this in your top 6 priorities? What is for certain, people are beginning to realise this, is the election is over. Labour have won. It's merely a debate about the size of their majority, but perhaps more importantly, who is going to be the opposition voice to Labour in the House of Commons and in the country. Well, you may say to me, perhaps it'll be Sir Ed Davey, when he's not falling off logs or on kiddie slides or whatever he may be doing. But Ed Davey can't provide real opposition to a Labour government about which we know in terms of policy really precious little, because Ed Davey agrees with the Labour Party on most substantive issues. And it isn't going to be Rishi Sunak leading the opposition. I mean, he'll probably be in California anyway, and the Conservatives will choose someone, and they probably won't last very long, and they can't provide opposition because they are hopelessly split down the middle on policy. In fact, they've spent more of the last 4 years fighting each other than they have fighting for the interests of the country. And I'm putting it to you that I believe I can be that voice of opposition. I'm pretty clear and consistent in what I stand up for. I'm not afraid of a fight. I don't bow to Twitter pressure or the mob on the streets. I've taken on the European Union, I've taken on the big banks, and I'm pretty certain I can take on a Labour government headed by Keir Starmer that will have almost no honeymoon period whatsoever, will inherit some very, very deep problems, and I don't think has the radical solutions to sort the country out. So my message to the country is thank you, but come on, join the revolt. What have you got to lose? You've been so let down, frankly betrayed, by the Conservatives after their 2019 win, that it really is time for something new. We're excited about this. We've got up 9 pips in the polls over the course of the last 10 days. I don't know where this ends, but I do feel momentum, optimism is out there with us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. So, that's the formal bit. Then we'll take some questions from the media. I think Chris just beat the two Chris's. Chris Hope just beat the Chris Mason in that race. Chris Hope.
Can I just ask, when you ask a question, maybe you are to stand up because camera type thing.
Christopher Hope, GB News. Nigel Farage, we've been in before in 2015. You get all these votes piled up and one MP in 2015. What will change this time? And if you get maybe 4 MPs, as David Bull told GB News last night, and you're in second place, and the Tories are in third place, and they get 80 or 100 MPs, what does that say about our electoral system?
Well, first things first, Chris. We got 4 million votes. When I led UKIP in 2015, we got 4 million votes. And you're quite right, 1 seat. Never in the history of British elections had so many votes counted for so few seats. And I was deeply frustrated by it, and I'll admit, pretty wounded by it. I mean, wounded to the point where I pretty much said to myself, I never ever want to do this again. But here I am, back out of retirement again. We're not going to get 4 million votes. We're not going to get 5 million votes. We're going to get a very, very substantial number of votes. I genuinely think we can get over 6 million votes. I don't know where the ceiling is. But when you start to get through, I mean, think about the Liberal Democrats. Now, albeit they've got a much more developed ground game than we've got, and we know that, but the Liberal Democrats sort of went from 10 seats to 50 seats by just getting through that electoral threshold. Whether we get through it this time or not, I don't know. But remember, this is not a short-term commando raid. This is a 5-year commitment. This election is our first step towards building for 2029. So however many seats we win, you have my absolute assurance that our campaigning for the 29 election, our building of a big movement in this country will begin the very next day, on July the 5th. If we did finish up with a huge number of votes and a paltry number of seats, do you know what it would do? It would tell us, yet again, that Britain is broken and Britain needs reform. And that reform includes the electoral system, that reform includes the abomination that is the House of Lords, and that reform includes the right, as people in Switzerland have, to call referendums on key issues if they think their government and parliament are out of touch with them. Thank you.